What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm so glad you joined me today because today I'm excited to share with you one of my favorite mentors, trainers, coaches, Doug O'Brien. Doug is an internationally recognized expert in Ericksonian hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, and havening. And as a hypnotherapist, he's worked with Dr. Oz to help create the Department of Complementary Medicine at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. And he served as a master trainer in Tony Robbins' organization, teaching others how to become coaches. Doug is the author of The User's Guide to Sleight of Mouth and Step Up to Mastery with Ease. And besides being a master trainer in hypnosis, NLP, and havening, Doug's also a peak performance coach who's worked with just a ton of people, from bull riders to Manhattan CEOs to Broadway actors. And that's just to name a few. So we are so excited to be able to have him on the show today. And we're going to cue the theme song and we're going to jump right in. I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. All right, we are excited to have you here today, Doug. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I would love to start by just sharing with everybody your story and a little bit of your background. You used to be a pianist. Maybe, or you still are, I guess.
Well, I do play, but it is not my vocation anymore. It's what I just do for fun.
Right.
And to de-stress during these stressful times.
Sure. Well, how did you, you started playing when you were younger, and was that your path? Was that what you were going to do initially? I mean, you thought that was the direction you were?
Yeah, definitely. Somewhere around, 15 years old, I just decided, I probably wasn't tall enough or strong enough or fast enough or whatever to play professional sports. So I thought, well, this piano thing, I can do that pretty good.
All right. So you were saying you started when you're about 15.
Yeah. So somewhere around 15 years old, I decided I wasn't going to make it in professional sports. So I said, okay, well, this piano thing seems to be pretty good. And I loved it. I had a great teacher. So I said, yeah, I'm in. And I just, left school as early as I could and went home and practiced as much as I could and got into a music school, amazingly, since I'd only started piano when I was 13. But I still got into a music school and it was what I wanted to do. Because I started so late, I spent 5 years, went to another music school for a year in London, finally got a 4-year degree in 5 years. I actually got 2 4-year degrees, one in piano, because I took so many damn courses over the period of that time. Right. So I got 2 degrees, one in piano performance and one in theory and composition. So yeah, I came to New York City to play rock and roll bands and did, taught at the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music. It's what I was, it's what I did for a number of years.
Wow.
Until that darn Tony Robbins came along and changed my life.
Yeah, well, that seemed to happen to a lot of us. Well, what was it that drew you out of it? I mean, you were committed. You had done what you needed to do, degrees. I mean, you basically did the thing, right? You were an artist.
Well, yeah, I was, and I was playing in bands. It was very creative and very fun, but it was really hard. It was really hard. There was no money in it, unless you were like David Bowie or something. There was no money in it. I mean, it's very little money in it. I earned a living, but and after a number of years of slogging through and, you know, going from not paycheck to paycheck, but from gig to gig, um, I was drawn to this Tony Robbins workshop by my girlfriend at the time, and I was amazed that it was really interesting stuff. I only went because she was like uh, threatening me if I didn't come, but it was really cool. It was really cool, and that's the way they did marketing back then. It was kind of the EST program, the forum strategy. But yeah, I was really impressed by this firewalk experience that I did with Tony Robbins, and this stuff that he was teaching to do the firewalk called NLP, or neuro linguistic programming, that I wanted more. I had no thought that it was going to take over my life. I just found it really interesting. Um, and it was. And then I started doing it. People said, "Oh, well, can you help me with this?" And I'd do a session and charge $50 and go like, "Holy crap, that's as much money as I'd make in a whole evening of playing piano," or something like that. It's far easier, and I could do 2 or 3 of them in a day. So it was just sort of segued over to doing more and more of this, NLP and hypnosis stuff. And you know, I still taught a few lessons. I still taught at a school in Brooklyn throughout the '90s, but then it just fell away.
Yeah. Why did you pick up hypnosis too? Like you were doing NLP, you had learned some of that. Uh, did you go and learn from Richard Bandler and John Grinder as well, or did
I
you?
did. When I first did my Tony Robbins Firewalk, it was just a weekend introduction to NLP. Tony Robbins was an NLP trainer at the time. So when I went to get certified in NLP from Tony Robbins, um, he brought to the party, to this 15-day certification course, he brought Richard Bandler, he brought Robert Dilts, he brought Todd Epstein. No, he didn't bring Todd Epstein. He brought Tad James and Wyatt Woodsmall and a bunch of other people. A guy named Dave Dobson, who was an amazing hypnotherapist. And they were all so different from Tony. I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know that, NLP was so, in a way, broad and diverse. I thought it was like Tony's way of doing it, but it turned out to be a whole lot of different things that could be possible, very different from Tony. And I vibed, I meshed really well with like Robert Diltz's work and Dave Dobson's work. And since Dobson was a hypnotherapist and I was hearing all about Milton Erickson, I thought, well, that sounds fascinating to me. I want to learn more about that. So I went off and studied with whoever basically would let me in. It was a little bit more of a rarefied company. You had to sort of be a MSW or a PhD or some sort of lettered person to get into those trainings a lot of times. Dobson would let me in, however, so I went and did some things with him and some other people as well.
It's definitely, it seems like it's the same in every industry, right? You've got your group that's like, okay, well, you have to do something to get into this.
Yeah.
That's great though. I mean, it's always nice to find somebody that'll work with you.
Yeah, that's true. I'm also a little dubious about places that'll let me in, though. It's kind of like the old Groucho Marx line, I wouldn't join any club that would have somebody like me for a member.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so how did you know at what point did you know, hey, this is it, this is the direction I'm going to go? Like, what was it? Was there something going on in your life, or was it just the natural fit for where you wanted to go? Or
It's just a kind of a natural fit. Like I said, it just sort of segued over. My band broke up. Drummer went off and joined another band. The guitarist just retired from playing and stuff like that. So, probably if I'd been in a great band that had a tour or something, I probably would have stayed doing that sort of thing, but it didn't happen. And
right.
it would have been hard to start another venture. So I just was, in a way, tired of that whole race. And this was easier. I could be a solopreneur, self-employed. It was just much easier. And it was a calling. It felt like, I was really good at it. It was something that fit. It was challenging. It was interesting. It was engrossing. I loved working with these people that I was working with. I loved the ability to change, seemingly intractable problems in a session or two. It was amazing. And I'm kind of a trance-cateer too. So I just love the idea of going into trances and altered states I've always been an explorer of altered states in various ways. So it just fit with my way of being.
Sure. Well, it seems
Yeah.
like music is a natural path for that too. I mean, I feel like dance is as well. You know, it's a
Right.
great way to get into that state. And I think a lot of people are afraid of the word trance, just for whatever reason. I mean, you maybe
Mm.
studied and learned that, but that seems like a scary word when I hear people talk about it. And yet we do things like dance and music so that we can get to those states. And so they're a lot more normal
Yeah.
than maybe people realize.
Much more normal. People go into altered states or trances all the time. One of the contributions Milton Erickson made to the field of hypnosis is to recognize that, we're in trances all the time, and they can be productive trances, like dancing and music, or just anything that you do well without thinking about it, typing on a keyboard, anything you do well without thinking about it, basically you're doing other than consciously. You're not consciously saying, okay, how do I raise this finger to press the R key? How do I raise this finger? You're just doing it,
Right.
just happening. So you're doing it other than consciously, i.e. in a trance state, so we enjoy those states. It's a flow state. It's being in the zone. When runners or athletes talk about getting into the zone, that's what we're talking about. It's a lovely thing. And if there's words that's like hypnosis, people, think trance is bad. Try saying hypnosis to people. Like, oh, I know, don't put me in hypnosis. That means you're going to steal my wallet and, I'll be subject to your every whim. Trance is at least safer than than hypnosis for a lot of people.
Sure.
But, altered states, zones, however you want to put it, people are in that all the time. So how do we make it useful? How do we make it productive? I think is the ultimate question.
Yeah. Where do you think this stigma came from for hypnosis and trance states and things like that? With, we know it's successful, we know it works, we know it's something we do naturally as humans. And,
Yeah.
so where did this?
Hypnosis has a kind of interesting history. Sigmund Freud developed his theory of the unconscious by studying hypnosis with a guy, I believe, named Charcot. And he wasn't particularly good at it, or didn't think that deep of a trance was necessary to do what he thought was important, what Freud thought was important, which was analysis of the dreams or whatever. He wanted to analyze the thing. So hypnosis was good for bringing that up to the surface, but not necessarily for the analytical part. So when Freud kind of, poo-pooed the whole thing and say, oh, you don't want to do hypnosis, don't do that, do analysis with me, is basically I think a marketing move on his part. But it put hypnosis on the back burner for a long time because he was such a seminal figure in this field of psychotherapy. He was the guy. So what he said went for a long time. So hypnosis was relegated to the back shelves and primarily for stage shows. So then you'd get these guys who were like Rasputin up there going like, I am going to put you into trance and make you do. And so it was like this showbiz thing, and lazy screenwriters, people go into trance and then they do murders like the Manchurian Candidate or something like that. So it gave the wrong impression of what hypnosis is. And it took, I think, Erickson being a medical doctor and being so amazingly proficient and a genius, actually, that kind of brought it back into acceptability to whatever level it is at this point. I worked at a hospital for a few years in the Department of Complementary Medicine, where I did pre-surgical hypnosis for patients before they went in for heart surgery. So it's gotten some status back in the world.
Well, and although that's not one of the things that I specialize in, I've used some of the techniques and processes that you taught me just to help some of my athletes get ready for minor surgeries. And
Really?
yeah, and their recovery time afterwards was ridiculous. I mean, just crazy fast. And their doctors didn't get it. The people around them didn't get it because it didn't make sense to everybody else. But it was stuff that you shared with me during the time that I was training with you, and it's great stuff. So did you ever have a time in your process where everything wasn't working out? Maybe the money wasn't coming in and it just wasn't happening for you? Uh,
Yeah. Yes.
well,
Yes.
so what did you do to keep, I mean, you have all this knowledge, right? And I feel like oftentimes it's so much easier to work on somebody else than it is to work on yourself. But so how have you used all of the stuff that you know to help you, or do you?
Yeah. Well, it helps because my standards are really low. Um, oh God. You know, when I went to college, it was for the love of music, and I came out of college, and I moved to the East Village in New York City and played in punk rock bands. You know, it wasn't about money. Um, you know, it was like 1981, 19. You know, my first band was called Ultra Violence. So I literally had no money, you know. And sometimes when I have done sales for Tony Robbins or whatever, and people say, I just don't have the money, they don't know what not having money means. They're saying they didn't have enough money. They wanted to invest just now, but they had money. I knew what having no money meant, and because I didn't have any for a long time, so I got used to this sort of like, I'll be okay kind of thing, and I will make it through. So I think I have a greater resilience, a greater tolerance for, you know, the perceived lack, or I don't know where my next gig is going to come from kind of thing. Because, you know, the thing about hypnosis and NLP is it works, you know. So we don't necessarily have a patient who comes in every Tuesday at 2 o'clock for 6 years. You know, we see them 2 or 3 times and then they're gone, they're done, right? So where's the next guy going to come from? We don't know. Fortunately, there's a lot of people and a lot of people with things that they need to work on. So, and it does work. So we get the referrals, and it builds eventually. So but there have been plenty times when like the money'd be going out faster than it was coming in, and there was no, you know, set thing on the horizon. I don't have a job that I go to and get a paycheck. You know, I'm self-employed. So anybody who's self-employed knows that feeling. And you know, now with the COVID-19 thing going on, you know, a lot of people who are living in the gig economy are suffering a lot. You know, Uber drivers, etc. And, you know, thank God we have, you know, Zoom, and we have the ability to, you know, basically do what we do, you know, talk to people, you know, in a particular kind of way, you know, ask particular kind of questions, and, you know, work with police and stuff like that. But we can do that. So, you know, I'm charging vastly less money than I did a month and a half ago. You know, I was charging $300 for a session down in New York City. Yeah, it's like whatever you can afford. You got $20? Great, let's talk. You know, so, but it's working. We can do it. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's great that that there are great coaches and trainers like you, and I know that for me, you were integral in my development and my education, and like you found when you went to Anthony Robbins, he kind of spurred us on and he got us going. He kind of like opened our eyes, and then uh, you know, I was able to go and dig in and find you. And and so it was great to be able to do that so many years ago and be able to get on this path. So I thank you for that. And people, I think anybody out there would be um, wise to learn from you. I mean, it's your information is great, and the way you present it and the way you teach it has always been wonderful. You're a great teacher, and you
Oh,
are inspiring. And so anybody out there, all of my listeners can hear and know that you're definitely one of my mentors, and I often refer to you along the way. So, so I thank you for that. You know, we've learned along the way.
it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Well, if I can help, it's a, you know, what can I do?
No, it's really, oh, it's going to fill the screen. Oh my God, my head is getting so big. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
And
but
if I may, just for a brief second, I do appreciate everything you've just said. And I think part of reason for, whatever level of being a good teacher I am, it comes from the same sort of background that you and I share, which is the arts. Um, it's not enough for a teacher to say, I'm going to now show you how it goes, and now my work is done. A teacher's job is to get it so the student can then, play that piece of Bach or dance that particular, combination, that you get, oh, no, do it again from the top, 5, 6, 7, 8, point your toes, you got to make those corrections and help you guide the student to get to where they want to go. So for me, when I started segueing out of teaching music and teaching, NLP instead, it carried that same sort of thing with it. It wasn't enough just to, dump out the information. I wanted to make sure that the students got it, that they could replicate it, they could do it, they understood it enough, and they could actually have it in their fingers, if you will, enough to do it themselves. So that's, I think, thank you. And that's kind of where I think you and I have a common sort of background is in that realm of teaching.
yeah. Well, and it's there's a certain amount of discipline that has to come with the arts, and a certain amount of artistic element that comes along with it as well, whether it's music, dance, acting, singing, whatever it is. And I think that
Yeah.
combination fits really well with uh, the art of hypnosis and NLP and those things that we're doing to help people find what they're good at already and bring it out. And that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So, over the years, one of the things that's always stood out to me, and it was probably one of the things I got at Tony's first, event, was just what you focus on, you get. And
Mm.
and I think that for along the way, a lot of what is scary about that is if somebody's going to take on that belief, then that means if they're focusing on crappy stuff, they're going to get a lot of crappy stuff. And so there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that. But, in your life and over, let's say, even just the last 5 years, uh, what what has been your primary focus to get the things that you want to achieve and accomplish? What are the things that you focus on a regular basis?
Wow, that's a deep question. Why I drew this nice cow. Let me just answer this really. So I'm good at drawing, getting better. Um,
A start. It's a start.
uh, gosh, I don't know how much I want to, or you want me to go into this particular subject area, but about 8 years ago ish, I was introduced to this thing called the havening techniques, which is a psychosensory therapy. And I do a lot of work with that these days. I add it to when in a therapeutic or coaching situation, we do havening, we do hypnosis, we do everything I know how to do. It's always grist for the mill. For myself, I do a lot of havening. I do a lot of self application of the technique. Um, because it's just, I find it so very, very useful. Because basically what you do with havening is you stroke the face, stroke the arms, which creates delta waves in the body, creating certain chemicals to be released in the brain, like oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and GABA. So it's a very calming thing that helps you to be focused and stuff. But what's also very interesting about it is that the process of memory consolidation takes place at night when you're dreaming, when your brain is naturally in delta. And during the sleeping portion of that delta process, dreams come where you are basically just sorting through things. They're not probably dreams you remember consciously, but they're sorting through things and you're consolidating memories at that point. So basically the hippocampus, little seahorse shaped organ in the brain near the brainstem, that's why it's called the hippocampus. That's what hippocampus means in Greek, is the part of the brain that creates new memories. But they're very short term. So to do larger, long-term memory, it has to, consolidate them out to the larger cerebral cortex. It does that during delta sleep or delta times during the day. And it requires serotonin to do that. So essentially what we do with havening is we hack into this memory consolidation system by putting ourselves in delta by doing this touch on our arms or on the face. We mostly do the arms these days because of the COVID-19. But if you're self-isolating, I haven't been around anybody for a while, and the face is fine too. You get a lot of delta waves from touching the forehead and the cheeks. At any rate, what I do is I visualize what I want to have be true for me. So I'm focusing on what I want to accomplish, not what I don't want, but what I do want. And I talk to myself, give affirmations basically about those things that I'm visualizing. So I'm going to be successful today. I'm going to be really focused and clear today. I'm going to accomplish a lot in my website production today, or whatever it might be. So I'm visualizing myself doing that while I talk to myself. And that basically, in a way, creates this, clear feeling of like, this is happening. This is reality. So it hacks into the memory consolidation system and says, remember this, you're doing well today. You're focused, so it really creates that. And also helps, I think, with that resilience I was talking about before as well, that I may not know where my next gig's coming from, but I feel clear that it's going to be coming, and I can feel really confident and calm while it's happening. So I do a lot of that.
That's really cool. There's a lot of mixed information that comes across in social media, and it's challenging to sift through and deal with for a lot of people. A lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs and people that are very self-driven, and so it's normal to be going after getting information from any source that we can. And so in order to cut through that information, how can my listeners and the people listening to you right now take in this idea? Because of, you said affirmations, and you were talking about this idea of havening and self-touch, and this idea that we can take care of ourselves and send ourselves in the right direction. While on the other side of the coin, you have people going, oh, that's just a bunch of fluff and it's a bunch of baloney. None of that works. Only absolute, doing, the mechanics of it is what's going to happen. But, there's a definite other side of the coin where people are going, that stuff doesn't, that's all just a bunch of baloney, like, what would you say to the people that are listening, trying to sift that out? How can they figure out what's right?
No, I agree. I totally am on board with that. I am a skeptic from day one. When I first went to the Tony Robbins thing in 1985, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to get this I'm going to get this done. Let my girlfriend stop bugging me for it. And okay, I did it. Fine. Thank you. I was surprised that I liked it. I was not ready to, but it had felt like really logical science, if you will, behind what he was saying. He explained things really well. It made sense, and it worked by evidence of walking across the hot burning coals. It's like, wow, it must be true. And when I was working at the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, the reason I was there back in the 90s with Dr. Oz was that Dr. Oz and a few other the doctors at the time were trying to ascertain what alternative medicines, alternative therapies would work in a hospital setting, what actually would have some merit in a hospital setting. A lot of things were there at the outset. The only thing left when we were done was hypnosis and massage. That's it. Everything else was gone, including an energy touch called therapeutic touch, which was called therapeutic touch, although there is no touching involved. It's just energy healing. Long story short, they discovered that, some of the science behind that wasn't quite scientific enough to merit being in the hospital. So although they saw results from it, they, got rid of it from the hospital. One of the things I love about havening, by the way, the word havening comes from, a safe haven. If somebody is feeling traumatized, part of the reason they get traumatized is because there's no escape. There's no way to escape this thing. There is no safe haven. So havening brings a person to a place of feeling of that haven, that safety. Havening was created by a doctor, Dr. Ronald Rudin, who's an MD and a PhD, and is sort of co-created with his brother, who's also a doctor, doctor of dental surgery, DDS. And they didn't tell anybody about this research that they were doing. They were interested in tapping and why tapping worked, but they didn't buy the science behind it. So they wanted to find out why it did work. So they did years of research before they told anybody about it. And they only started telling people about it when they were pretty convinced that they'd nailed it, that they'd gotten it, a scientifically sound explanation for why when you do this, you get delta waves. That happens. When I do this, the light goes off. When I turn this, light goes back on because of electricity. Your body is an electrical chemical organ. When you do this, in order to feel this sensation, this has to be transduced into an electrical chemical signal for your brain, which is isolated in the skull up here, this little protoplasm up here, to say, oh, I felt that. It's an electrical chemical signal that goes there. When you do this, it's a delta wave. That electrical part is delta wave. The chemical part is the chemicals that are released there, which are serotonin, oxytocin, GABA, and oxytocin. Did I say that? Serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and GABA. That makes a huge difference. It also, anyway, long story short, it's the science behind it. That is real. It's not woo-woo. It's not airy-fairy. It's there's substance behind havening. And that's why I like it, because it's there scientifically and it works really amazingly well. Put those things together, I'm sold.
Awesome. That's really cool. With this, with all the quarantine stuff going on right now, and it's hard to sift through what is accurate and what is not accurate, what information is being put out that is true and not true, and I know a lot of people are dealing with that and trying to be as intelligent as they possibly can and not just be sheep, and I know that's clearly a thing that's happening, and as people are sifting through that and trying to figure out what's the best thing to do, what's not the best thing to do, how can they manage their worry and their fear in the best way?
Excuse me one second. Great question. I think for one thing that they need to find something that works for them that they can do, and then actually do it. When I was working at the hospital, just a quick little story. Most of my patients were people that were in the hospital for surgery. But every now and again, you'd get, I'd get a nurse who'd come in or a doctor who'd come in or something like that, who wanted some hypnosis for one thing or another. So one doctor came in one time for stress management, which hypnosis is great for. Havening, by the way, great for. It's great for stress management. And I said, okay, well, how can I help you, doctor? And he said, well, I've got all this stress. I said, well, about what? Where is this coming from? And he said, well, I'm working like these 80-hour shifts or something. I mean, what he went on to tell me about was just like crazy. 38-hour shifts on call for the next 38 hours. I mean, he never had time for himself, ever. And so I said, when do you have time for yourself? He said, never. I never have time for myself. He said, so what do you want me to do, for God's sake? I'm just going to wave a magic wand, have this watch go back and forth and say, you can live in impossible situations and not feel stressed. It's like, I'm sorry. You got to actually do something about it. So if he could find some time, and I challenged him to find some time, even if it were 5 minutes, something is better than nothing. All right. So, I introduced him to it was called the Department of Complementary Medicine upstairs. I said, here, this is our storage closet. It's big enough for a chair. And see that chair there? That's where we go when we want to de-stress for a few minutes. So you're invited to come up here twice a day and just close this door. No one will bother you. We put this little sign on the door. We know it's time for self-meditation, self-hypnosis, some sort of self-care. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to find some time for yourself, and whether that's walking around the block, or whether it's meditation, or it's dancing, or whether it's playing the piano, or doing some self-havening. Self-havening is great for de-stressing because of those 4 chemicals I told you about. It reduces stress. If you're not doing havening, if you're in gamma waves or other, brainwave activity going on, the brain is releasing other chemicals like adrenaline and norepinephrine and cortisol. Those stress hormones take a toll. This is the counteraction for that. But so is meditation, so is dance. Anything that sort of stimulates that relaxation response, the parasympathetic nervous system, is going to be very, very helpful. It's a fascinating thing, havening. One of the things about it is that, when you're doing this, what you want to do in your mind is distraction, basically. So one of the protocols the doctors created for medical professionals in this very stressful time for themselves is to take 5 times, go in the supply closet, do something, take 10 minutes for yourself, do the havening. But at first, you go through your day remembering all the stuff that you did. Because why? It changes by instead of having cortisol and norepinephrine and all those things, buzzing through your brain while you're thinking, oh, I got to do these things. You've pictured them very differently when delta waves are there. When you're getting dopamine and serotonin, the visualizations are very, very different. They get sorted in your brain very differently. They're just things that happened, and they don't affect you emotionally. They're just stuff, images flying by. So you do that for a couple, 3 minutes, going through your day, 5 minutes maybe. And then you just close your eyes and you put yourself someplace other than the supply closet. You put yourself in a haven. You put yourself like, okay, now I'm at the beach, or now I'm in my backyard with the gates closed and I'm lying on my hammock, or whatever is right for you. I'm in the dance studio, just playing some, Camille Saint-Saëns and dancing the Black Swan dance or whatever it might be, and you put yourself there fully, just tell yourself, I'm there now. And in your mind, while you're doing that, you say things like, I'm safe, I'm happy here, I'm good, life is good, I'm okay. Just tell your stuff like that. And it's amazing how well that works. Trust me. It's amazing how it works. Try it out for yourself. It's very simple. You stroke your arms from the shoulders down to the elbows, or you do your face. That's fine too. Actually, the palms of the hands also give you delta waves. So pretty much no matter where you rub yourself like this, you're going to get delta waves. And do that process. It's remarkably relaxing and what's the word I'm looking for? It's nice. I can't find exactly the right word, but it's reassuring. It's makes you feel like you are in a safe haven.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear the comments and hear back from everybody to, go do this, because if I get any comments in the chat or whatever of that it's silly and you haven't tried it, then I don't want to hear you. Basically, go and do it, and go and try and see how it works. Besides, havening, you have had an extensive career already of working with so many people using NLP and hypnosis as well. What in NLP is your go-to process when things seem to be falling apart? Like, what do you use for yourself when things seem to be falling apart?
I often do a kind of hypnosis NLP combo. A lot of NLP really is derived from Ericksonian hypnosis. A lot of different combos are. It's hard to say this is hypnosis and this is NLP. They're kind of both. Right. So for me, it's a timeline basically thing that I do when I am feeling totally stressed. So in other words, I want to know that like in havening, one of the elements of being traumatized, of encoding an experience as trauma, is a feeling that there's no escape. Right? That's one of the 4 elements that goes into the encoding of a trauma. So if I can tell myself, okay, this is not the end of the world here today. I can go up over my timeline and float off into the future and say, okay, a month from now, 2 months from now, float down into my timeline. I'm okay. I have survived. Life is good. Things are back to normal-ish. We've thrived in a lot of ways, not only survived. So if I can float over the timeline and do that, that's a great thing. Even when I'm, stressed about doing an interview or something like that, I can say, okay, well, it starts at 11, but I'm going to float over my timeline and come down at 12 o'clock and say, okay, thank you. It was great to be here. I can see the end of it. right? Which means all I have to do is just sort of get through it, and I will arrive at that safe place. So I will get through it and arrive at that safe place. That's a huge thing that I do for myself, and I do it a lot, honestly, in the small chunks and also in the larger chunks.
Sure. I love that. That's great. Um, we talk a lot about emotions, and one of the things that I enjoy uh, working with people on, and I guess it does stem from my background in dance as well, is that emotional quality and authenticity uh, for my dancers, and getting them to perform authentically was
Mm.
super valuable. And then what I found is that helping that come into people's world in terms of business and sales and other areas really made a difference, really helped. So we love to talk about emotions on the show a lot, and just being able to utilize, manage, control, execute your emotions. It seems to be a bit of a hot topic to talk to people about doing an emotion, and they go, wait, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you do everything else. So,
Yeah.
but as far as emotions go, and just talking about, what you do, because obviously you've been successful, you have found a way to do what you love, you've found a way to live authentically. And so I call this, a lot of shows will do their lightning round or their speed round or something like that. And so I like to do one where I talk about emotions and just like dig into that element. So we're going to call this Doug's go-to emotions. Um, so when you're in a good place or when you are in a bad place, right? So we got the two sides of it. I'm going to kind of throw out time, and I would love for you to tell us what your go-to emotion is or what your maybe limiting emotion would be. Sound good?
I have no idea,
Okay.
but
All
it
right.
sounds scary. Let me just go up to my timeline for a minute. I'll be
That's okay. Yeah, there you go. It's okay.
okay. I can do it. I'll
It's a
survive.
little vulnerable, but that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, in business, what's your go-to positive emotion?
Hmm. Wow. That's an interesting question. I don't think I have a good, it's not. Yeah. Can I tell you a quick little story?
Please.
There's an artist by the name of Chuck Close. Um, I'm sure you've seen his art at some point or other. He's famous for these huge, used to be photorealistic portraits, like of a face. Um, Museum of Modern Art. You've seen him, but he developed this rare disease a few years ago. So now he has to travel to his studio in a motorized wheelchair. He can't hold a pen or a paintbrush, so they have to Velcro it into his hand, because he has no finger control. And his paintings are no longer photorealistic; they're kind of globs of paint. So his assistants make these grids on this massive canvas, and he's got it all planned out, and he just goes over into his wheelchair, and they actually will move the canvas so he doesn't have to go too far off his wheelchair area, and he'll paint these blobs in that little square, in these little grids. And when you look at it close up, it's just like this massive colors. But then when you look at it from 30 feet away, it's like, oh my God, that's Robert Rauschenberg. Wow, that's amazing. You can see the face, and it looks like him. It looks like, wow, really cool.
Right.
Google it; it's really amazing. But one of my favorite quotes is from him. My favorite quotes when it comes to business is, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us show up and get to work.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't like psych myself up to work. I just walk up the stairs and start. Um,
Right. I love that.
yeah.
Okay. And what would be um, the most annoying limiting belief for business?
Oh, that I'm not good enough.
Seems like a trend for us humans.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's a remarkably common ailment for human beings. Boy, it's a common belief, a common stumbling block. I've helped thousands of people get over that, or find methods for dealing with it. And it still pops up for me every now and again, like, what the hell is this doing here still? It's like ants under the refrigerator. It's like, I thought I got rid of them last year.
Yeah,
you know?
that's so true. That's so true. Okay, what about what's your go-to emotion for coaching?
Curiosity.
Nice. What about,
Curiosity and playfulness.
okay.
Yeah, because for me, coaching is a play state,
Yeah.
and I just want to experiment and play and be curious. And wouldn't this be fun? Let's find out.
And that I know that is true because it, I hope I've picked up a lot of things from you, but I think one of the things that I've picked up is that curiosity, and that's something you taught me straight away from the beginning. Is, get curious. Get
Yeah,
curious. Like, wow, how did you do that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you get so afraid? That's
Yeah, yeah. Because that's exactly the central NLP question is, wow, how do you do that? Whether it's something you want to emulate, like if somebody's a great artist, they're like, wow, how do you do that? Or if somebody's doing like a phobia of being on an airplane, you're like, wow, how do you do that? You
right.
know? Because when you can unpack either one, then you can enter into the system and perhaps change it so they're not phobic anymore. Or you can enter in the system and go like, oh, I've discovered something for myself I can do now. So both those questions are really valuable, and both same question, both different situations are really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Wow, how do you do that?
Okay, so for coaching, what about a limiting emotion?
I'm not good enough.
Understandable. Okay, what about in relationships?
And
Uh,
let me just say this about that. It does rear its ugly head from time to time, and it doesn't last long. Um, things come up. It doesn't mean they're going to stay. Because I got workarounds pretty quick.
yeah.
When I feel it coming, see it coming, whatever, I go like, okay, fine, thank you for sharing. And well, how do you do that? I get back to the questions I want to be asking.
Okay, and your go-to emotion for relationships?
Patience.
Nice. And limiting?
Um, Limiting emotion for relationships. Is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Gosh, I'm not sure.
That's probably good.
Yes.
Who knows, really? um, all right, and let's do one more.
Thank you for letting me off the hook there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. um, what about go-to emotion for partnerships?
Trust.
Okay, and limiting.
Distrust.
Un-
Uncertainty. Uncertainty.
yeah, yeah,
But when I enter into a partnership, I usually just I've decided to trust them, and I'd have um, little distrust.
yeah. Well, and I think you have to. I mean, if you're at the point where you're going to make that decision, by that point, you have to either you have to decide to trust them. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's probably bad news.
Yeah. But as Tony Robbins once said, and because he was quoting somebody else, you should trust but verify. I think he was quoting Putin or something. I don't know. So I remember he said old uh, uh, Middle Eastern expression, which was trust in Allah, but tie up your camels.
Okay, I like it. Don't have any camels. I can't
Yeah.
relate. Sorry. um, so ultimately, you've been in this personal development realm for a long time. You've helped thousands of people, and me being one of them. And it's awesome to see. What is it that that really motivates you to want to help people?
It's a funny thing. I can't imagine not wanting to help people. Um, it's just in my bones, I think. Uh, when I was a music teacher, I just wanted help to help people learn to play and express themselves and to have fun doing that. It's always just been what I do in a way. So when I was playing music, I wanted to help people enjoy listening to this really cool song I've got to offer. It wasn't so much I wanted to impress them and have them say like, "Wow, what a great piano player he was." It was like I was sharing this really cool song. Hey, listen to this, and I was always about helping. Um, so yeah, I was talking with a colleague of mine the other day who works in hospice, and she is very busy right now, and it's just like, wow, it's such an impressive calling. I mean, my God, it's just, she's a saint. But she's just, she works 12-hour days at this point in time, 18-hour days at this point in time. It's just what she does.
Right.
For me, it's like, couldn't you just stop? Couldn't you take a break? Isn't this? And she's like, they need me. It's what I do.
Yeah, for sure. So, through the years, I've, been able to train with you and learn from you, and people have gotten to know you today, and they might want to go and work with you in some degree or fashion. So tell us about what projects you're up to, what you'd like people to know about, how they can find you, how we can connect people with you.
Wonderful questions. Thank you very much for asking. Well, as you can see behind me, this is a whiteboard. It looks kind of like a big computer screen, but it's actually a whiteboard. I'm teaching classes online these days because I can't do it in person. So we've started some classes. I have this little new project I'm calling Essential Coaching Skills. So if they go to essentialcoachingskills.com, the website might be done soon. Doesn't stop me from doing things with it, but it's not quite launched yet. It will be soon. But I also have a couple of other websites, ericksonian.com, named after the work of Milton Erickson, and Ericksonian Hypnosis. So it's called ericksonian.com. And of course, Doug O'Brien, hypnosis.com is a great way to find me.
Awesome. Well, cool.
Yeah.
And they can, once they can get in contact with you, you have classes, you've written some books, you have hypnosis stuff, you have certification training, you've done so much, and you have so many things that people could take advantage of. And honestly, I know after today that people will be inspired to find your work and learn from you. So I appreciate you so much. And I can't thank you enough for your influence on my career and my life. And honestly, I am so excited to present you to my audience and let them be influenced by your awesome teachings and your incredible guidance. So
if I can just stop you one quick second. Thank you very much for all that. And I will just candidly admit that it's seeing you and people like you that I've taught, sort of doing it and taking it, that really makes it all worthwhile for me. When I was a piano teacher, it was a nice job, but I loved it when my students got up and played and had fun doing it. And some of them have gone on to be, professional musicians, and nothing makes me happier than, people actually doing it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure. I sure appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Be well.
Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.